Welcome to Sports Guy Talking. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am here today to make game picks on one of the best rivalries in all of college basketball. This will be the first time since 1980, wow, that's a long time ago, that UNC will be going up against a Duke-led team that is now coached by Coach K. Both of these powerhouse basketball schools are having down years, but the hype for the rivalry will never be on a downswing. Before I say anything else though, I want to present you guys with the topic question. So here it is. Can UNC spoil Jon Scheyer's first rivalry game? Alright, so Jon Scheyer, he's the Duke head coach. He's not done a good job so far in year one, but hey, anytime you got to replace a legend, it's tough to do. And Coach K did leave him in a pretty good position, but anytime you got to be a head coach the first time around, particularly when you're replacing a legend, it's tough. It's why Duke has underachieved this year. And by underachieving standards, we're talking about 16-6, 7-4 in ACC play. You know what? Most schools, I think, would be willing to take that. But for Duke standards, you know, they're not really used to this kind of production from the coaching staff. They're used to seeing a lot better, and Duke so far has not played anywhere close to playing their best basketball. I mean, right now they've only got 2 scorers over 10 points, but we know Duke has a lot more talent than that. I'm not even a Duke fan, okay? When you look at Kyle Fliflowski, all right, he's averaging almost 16 points a game, getting you almost 10 boards a game. He's not necessarily been shooting the most efficient, but he's been doing an okay job for Duke, but they need him to obviously play better. Then they got this Jeremy Roach guy. He's done an okay job this year too, but he needs to improve his efficiency as well. When you look at what Duke has, they've had a lot of players that are underachieving right now. They're used to having their players look like superstars in the making. Right now, they don't look like they have superstars in the making right now. They look like they might have okay players that might make a little Cinderella run in March Madness. But you know what? Most programs would be willing to take that. But if you're Duke, you're obviously not willing to take that. Now let's talk about what UNC's got, because they're the ones that are going to have to travel to Duke to come play against them in the first rivalry game this year. So they obviously faced each other last year. In fact, that was Coach K's final game in all of college basketball, and the fact that UNC beat them, you know, that's got to sting for Duke a little bit. And so Duke, you know, they're going to go out there and perform their absolute best, because they want to take ownership of this rivalry. This is the best rivalry in all of college basketball. I mean, you look at what UNC they were title favorites before the year started, not just in conference, national title favorites. And so far, they haven't lived up to that standard. They got a 15-7 record. They're 7-4 in ACC play. They're 6th in ACC overall in the standings. Look, they got players, but for whatever reason, it's not necessarily been clicking, just because of the fact that they haven't really been able to win away from home, and that's really been the tough challenge for UNC. At home, they've done a good job. On the road, not so much. On the road, they've kind of had trouble closing out some of these games. But you look at some of the players that UNC's got. They got that Baker guy. They got Caleb Love. They got RJ Davis. They got Pete Nance. All solid contributors for UNC. They seem like they had the team on paper to win a national championship, but for whatever reason this year, it hasn't been clicking. And Hubert Davis, second-year head coach, it's still kind of weird to still say his name, because you think about Roy Williams. When you think about UNC, you think about the great coaches between these two, and the fact that you got 2 newbies coaching against each other, Jon Scheyer and Hubert Davis, still feels not quite right. You used to seeing Roy Williams versus Coach K go up against each other in these rivalries. So when you look at it from that perspective, it still feels a fresh perspective, a new perspective, but it isn't necessarily a better perspective. The better perspective was seeing the greatness of Coach K and the greatness of Roy Williams. Because when you talk about Coach K, he's probably the GOAT in all of college basketball in terms of coaches. I hate saying that as a UNC guy, but it's true. There's really no argument for that whatsoever. When you look at what UNC has done this year, though, they can score the ball in the paint. They can score the ball from the 3. They can score pretty well. Duke, they can't necessarily score. So I think the keys for UNC to win is obviously they got to be able to shoot the ball efficiently. And I think they got to be able to stop some of Duke's top players, because Duke, they haven't necessarily been top heavy compared to past seasons. So I think that UNC, they've got to key down the top level players that they got on their team and make their bench players beat them. And as long as UNC shows up on offense, I think they'll be good to go. It'll be a tight game. It's always a tight game in these rivalries. And I want to make this analogy real quick. So when you look at UNC and Duke, 2 programs that are underachieving this year, think about this to a real life example. Think about 2 powerful companies, not even necessarily sports related. Let's talk about like in business, in chemistry, whatever, right? And you look at these two powerful companies that are going up against each other. And they've been so good for so long with their business, and then they finally change management because the CEO, he retires at the top of the chain, and that as a result has caused that new company to kind of fall off. That's exactly what has happened to Duke. They're used to having a powerful CEO take charge, and the fact that they no longer have that dependency to rely on, that's why it's kind of taken on a new feel, and it's a new era in Duke basketball. I understand that it's not really familiar territory. Heck, I wasn't even alive when Coach K wasn't coaching basketball. None of us that were watching the video are probably alive. Maybe a few people that are like age 40 or and up, something like that. Look, Coach K, he's been here a long time in the business, and the fact that Duke basketball doesn't have him, it just still feels kind of weird with that. And then when you look at UNC, yes, it's been over a year, but you could still feel the impacts that Roy Williams has on these recruiting classes and the impact they had on UNC basketball. The man was a living legend, okay? And the fact that Roy Williams still isn't around, even though Hubert Davis is a great coach in his own right, it still doesn't feel like Roy Williams ever really left this team, because it still feels like he's still there. And when you think about UNC, you think about the great coaches like Dean Smith, you think about the great coaches like Roy Williams. And my analogy to a CEO is basically, you think about these longtime CEO executives that have been there in those businesses that are finally left due to retirement. Now they bring on a new younger guy, and you can clearly tell that the company has a different vibe and the results are not producing as well as they did under old management. That's exactly what's happened to UNC and Duke. But despite that though, UNC and Duke, even though they're under new coaches, it still feels like they're performing around the same area, so that's still a rivalry in and of itself. So that's just the analogy that I wanted to make about the rivalry between UNC and Duke. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's always going to be a great game between those two. I'm honestly hyped up for it. Who do I think is going to win though? I think I gotta go with UNC because I trust their offense. If their offense shows up on the road, which has been easier said than done, but I think they'll show up. They'll be amped to play this game. They're going to play well. As long as they play their A game, I don't think Duke will win this game, because Duke, they're not top heavy. They're not going to get the job done. And I think UNC, they'll find a way to win. It'll be tight, but they'll find a way to win. Maybe Bacon makes some clutch baskets. Maybe Caleb Love will show up big time. Maybe RJ Davis can make some plays happen. That's what I see happening. So that is why UNC will beat Duke at Duke by the score of 78-74. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking, like the video, and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in my Instagram story every Monday. That'll be for the @DustinTran Instagram account. Make sure to follow me on Instagram @DustinTran and @SportsGuyTalking. Also, go follow me on Twitter @DustinTran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video. Comment down below. Check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel, Sports Guy Talking.